Hello and welcome to the Cutie Art Crusaders, episode 172 for November 10th, 2015. My name is Rainbow Plasma. I am the host and editor this week, and today I'm joined by...
Burn1, the special guest coordinator.
PhotoGuy317, I'm the media manager for the podcast.
And we are absent one Mr. Atmospark, as he had an appointment this week for something. I don't know.
Sad.
It was a hair appointment. That's what I'm going to say. He was having his hair did. So we are short with him for this week. But we've got a freshly moved Mr. Flutter Guy over here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I moved. I moved up to Boston. I'm currently in temporary housing. I will start my job on Monday. And then I move into my apartment over Thanksgiving. American Thanksgiving. Not Canadian Thanksgiving.
Not to be confused.
Yeah.
I have no idea when that is, so...
That's the 27th is kind of when... November 27th is when I'll move in. So...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And end of November.
Yeah.
Right about... Okay. I've just remembered that American Thanksgiving often overlaps with my birthday, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Well, when I celebrate Thanksgiving, I'll try to remember to wish you a happy birthday.
Thanks, Vern.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, same. Yeah, so
Cool.
it's
Awesome.
It's been a bit stressful, but
Yeah. Congrats, though.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I assume that most of the stress has passed, although you still have the big move. But
Yeah,
you know, now that you've actually got the place and have started the move and everything like that,
Yeah.
I imagine that's probably a big load off your mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is that we kind of just threw everything into the cars and brought it up to my temp place so that I can start moving it over to my apartment because the tenants are moving out early, so I can start like shuffling stuff over there so that in November it's not going to be as big of a move.
Yeah. Which is nice that at least it's not like the big rush. Like, let's all put all these big heavy things in a thing and then do it all and kill yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
You're still gonna have lots of moving stuff, but hopefully that's less. It seems like with the situation between you being able to move in a bit early, you'll be able to kind of do it over a period of time as opposed to like, oh my god, this week.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what it's been for the last week and a half or two.
Yeah. No, most of the stress is behind me. Most of the stress was actually on the move-in day because in order to get a parking sticker for my car so that I could park for free, I needed to register my car in Massachusetts. And in order to do that, I needed to get insurance in Massachusetts. And in order to do that, I needed proof of residency, like 2 forms of proof of residency in Massachusetts.
And in order to do that, you had to sacrifice your firstborn child.
Yeah,
Which
it
isn't
was
born
a pain.
yet. So.
Rip Ted Jr.
It involved like time travel and
Yeah.
all sorts of weird stuff. So.
It basically had to. They gave me like temporary insurance because I don't have proof of residency here because I don't have like a utility bills yet because I'm not living here yet.
Right.
So so it's like, yeah, I was able to get everything
Ugh.
sorted out, but it was just like, oh, yeah,
Fun!
yeah, yay.
Yeah. Well, like you said, hopefully most of the stress is behind you, and now it's just kind of slowly moving into the new place.
Yeah.
And by December, you'll have you'll finally. I think that's the hardest part is that when you move into a new place, it kind of takes a little bit to make it feel like home, right? You have a house, but not necessarily a home yet.
Yeah.
So I think once you get into your new place in December, right? That first night and the first couple of days are really nice because then it's like now I can make it my own.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it'll be good.
I'm sure you're probably looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Rad.
Burned, you hastily typed in stuff burned while we were doing an intro. What's up?
So I was thinking like, man, I never have any cool talking points, but something actually totally happened this week that was kind of like interesting. Have you ever ordered something online and then just like forgot
Never.
about it?
No.
Yes, I have.
Yes. All the time.
Well, it's like basically I ordered something super cool and then it like didn't come. There was complications and now it's like 6 or 7 months down the line and it finally came and it's like,
Wow.
oh, it's like Christmas.
Wow.
I ordered that really large sculpture of Discord and Fluttershy off We Love Fine.
Aw.
And they got a big shipment of them like when they were supposed to, and I pre-ordered the thing, you know, like 4 or 5 months down the line, but they were busted, so they had to reorder them. So another 4 or 5 months down the line, it finally came to my door and was like, "We Love Fine, like I haven't bought t-shirts in forever. What the heck is this?" And like opened up the package and I was like, "Yes, it came."
Nice.
So I have
That's
this
cool.
huge like foot tall sculpture of like Fluttershy and Discord, and it came in pieces and connected, and they're like all magnetically held together. It's super radical.
Nice.
All right.
I'll send
Cool.
you some pictures. So it's like that was cool as like Christmas on my door.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I've definitely had that experience before. Although I can't say that it's ever lasted 6 to 8 months. It's more been
Yes.
like I've ordered something and it's come on time. I just forgot I ordered it.
So definitely-
Usually,
Go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say usually I order like 3 or 4 things at once, and so I get 3 things and I go, okay, I'm done, and then the 4th thing comes and I'm like, oh right, yes,
Christmas.
that too.
Yeah. No, this is like I definitely ordered this at the beginning of the year, and then like finally came. Other than that, like the only other talking point that I had in that stuff was that I'm going up to Seattle this weekend to play in like a really like huge major Magic tournament with like 3,000 something players. It's gonna be freaking sweet.
Where do you expect to place? I want an exact number.
I expect to place within the medium because within the median of like
That
the
doesn't sound
middle.
like an exact number, Burned.
And whatever the median of 3,000 something people is, I believe it's about 1,500 something place. Because for a couple of reasons why I expect to get in the middle and not do really well is that I'm unfamiliar with the format. I haven't played in a while, but yet I still am positive in my abilities and my deck. So
I
don't know what
expect
more you
to
want from
have
me.
I expect you to scan a photo of the certificate that said that you came in 1,500 and something place.
Yeah. I'll just cross out whatever number I get and put something. And I'll let you know.
Turns out you actually come first, and I'm just not happy with it. Like,
Correct.
no, you said 1,500 something.
If I place in like the upper 20 to 25%, I would be 1, ecstatic, 2, leave with more money than I paid to get into the tournament, and then 3,
Nice.
that would be highly unlikely, but it would be sweet.
3, it's not gonna happen. That's cool. That's cool. I'm doing nothing. I'm boring. I'm doing school, guys.
Aw.
My like a week before, so 2 weeks by the time this podcast comes out, I had my week off. So
Mhm.
that was my exciting quote unquote times. But no, I've just got school.
Yeah, my last week was just like do lots of school. This week I got a project like due Monday that I have to somehow edit Sunday and Monday, but it'll be fine.
Fun.
It's 5 minutes of video. Yeah, I do that every week.
Fun. Yeah. I just wanted to also, before we get into the art, I wanted to do a little reminder. We mentioned it briefly last week, but we did an interview, kind of a follow-up auxiliary interview with John Martin Wong.
Thanks, Martin.
A couple of weeks ago. So Bernd and I sat down with him because he was the original animator for the Pie family back in season 1 during the flashback. And he wanted to talk a little bit about one of the latest episodes of My Little Pony in which the Pie family comes back. So we wanted to talk about, his kind of viewpoint of that, how he saw the characters when he was animating, and kind of how he just a whole bunch about how he did stuff when he was animating and how he perceived My Little Pony today. So it was really cool. It's about 40 minutes, so it's going to be up on our YouTube channel. So check that out.
Martin's a
but yeah, I
champ.
just wanted
Go
to
watch
send
him.
that reminder because it was really fun. Like we had already talked to him for an hour in a previous Cutie Art Crusaders episode, but it was really cool. It was cool to sit down with him for 40 minutes again and learn even more about kind of his process and the different fun stuff that he got to do when he was animating the show. So, yeah, I think it's cool. Not everybody gets to interview an animator, but we're just kind of special like that. So maybe you want to watch it, and maybe nobody gets hurt. Sorry, I turned into an Italian mob.
I was
boss
gonna
there.
say, like, what the heck happened to Rainbow Plasma?
Very unthreatening Italian.
It'd be a
mob
shame
boss.
if anybody came by your house and forced you to watch it with your eyelids taped.
Oh God. Like Clockwork Orange, kind of. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen Clockwork Orange. So
There's a famous
cue the
scene.
gasps. Cue the gasps.
What
I've
is
never
that,
seen it
R&B?
either, honestly.
Yes. Score. Cue the gasps that I can't hear. So let's move on to the art because we should probably do that because it's about 10 minutes in. So
Yep,
I'm
Googling
gonna start.
Clockwork Orange definitely answered your reference.
Mm-hmm. That's the one thing I know
Does
from Clockwork
Does that mean
Orange.
people
Wish
shouldn't
I
Google
didn't-
it?
Wait, no, don't Google it.
No.
Okay.
This is
Well,
bad.
there you go.
Yeah.
That's your burned, patented, don't Google this moment of the week.
It wasn't pleasant.
Okay, so let's move on to the art that is pleasant.
Mhm.
Hey. And
Wow.
my art piece comes first, and it is by the Wizard of Art, and it's called A Shortcut to Apples. And it is a wonderfully created piece that depicts kind of the crossover between My Little Pony and Lord of the Rings, with the Cutie Art Crusaders hiding from Nightmare Moon, which is supposed to be, what is it again? The Nazgul.
Yeah.
The Nazgul. So it's a really cool crossover piece, and of course, as we've mentioned many times in the show before, Wizard of Art is really awesome. So like it's two good things put together.
Now, guys, I can't
two
remember.
brothers.
Is it the Witch King or is it just some random Nazgul?
Don't remember.
Eh.
It might be the Witch King, but I don't remember.
My answer to that question is yes.
All the above.
I think it was just a Nazgul because the Witch King wore the helmet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you don't get to see the Witch King until the big battle at the end
Right.
with his crazy metal helmet that gets imploded.
Whoa, spoilers.
So no, this was just a Nazgul.
Yeah.
One of the 9, right? I don't remember.
One of the 9. Yeah.
I don't know why, but Nazgul reminds me of Sarah, probably because her name is Naz.
Nazagoring.
We call
Oh
her
my
Naz.
gosh. That's a great Halloween costume idea.
Hey.
Dang it, Halloween's gone by so
I wonder if
fast.
that's.
Yeah, too bad we're gonna have to do it in 360 days.
This is an
Aw.
art crossover that needs to happen. I need to draw Naz the Nazgul.
Hey.
She's gonna
Naz
have
is a ghoul.
snakes going through her hood. It's gonna be great.
I wonder if that's where she came up with the name.
I
Maybe.
don't know. Wasn't Nazagoring an Egyptian
Oh yeah, it could be.
king or something?
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyways, I believe, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm gonna just guess because it's Wizard of Art that this is probably a watercolor. It is. Cool. I scrolled down and used my eyes. It's a watercolor, which the Wizard of Art does a lot, and once again shows off his incredible skill with watercolor because it's so incredibly difficult for someone like me who's only ever done derpy 3rd grade watercolor to imagine doing something like this using what I consider to be a very messy medium. But evidently, when in the right hands, it's not quite so messy.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
It's crazy the different types of watercolor that there are, with watercolor crayons and pencils and it's just straight up watercolor brushes and whatnot. I'm really curious what kind of watercolors the Wizard of Art uses because it's very finely detailed and there's a little bit of running you can see in Nightmare Moon's mane and stuff, but most of it's just so tight and really well done.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always the I don't know, the compliment that we have whenever we feature Wizard of Art's work is just everything seems so neatly kept and placed and painted, yet we think of watercolor as a very unruly medium. But yeah, I don't know, it's I guess it's impressive to a certainty, but it's also I'm curious how long something like this might take, or how precise that the Wizard of Art has to be with certain things, and if it's just kind of a knack that he's learned really well with the medium, or if it's something that is a constant struggle. Because sometimes mediums work really well with their artists, oil or acrylic. It's just I can do this, and it's cool, sweet techniques. But I feel watercolor is one of those things that you have to be so dainty and careful with.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know.
I think when you look at certain mediums, you can look at them as either being just different or in a way that they can handicap you. And what I mean by that is there are some artists who are great, no matter what medium they use, and then they'll challenge themselves by using an obscure or specifically hard to use medium, such as some people who have tried to make amazing things in paint, right? People use MS Paint, which is not a very good art program. To create this fantastic, and because they're so good at it, they can make something that looks really good despite the medium. And I don't think watercolor quite fits that description. I think it's just different, and it might be more complicated in its differentness, but it's definitely not a handicap. As you can see here, this doesn't look any worse. It doesn't look like it's good for a watercolor. It just looks good in general. So I'm not quite sure how long these things take, but it's definitely distinct from that sense of a kind of handicapped medium. To me, it's just a different form of expression, and evidently the Wizard of Art prefers it and does an amazing job with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I kind of see what you're saying there, because it's not like it's like completely different, or like it's the wrong kind of style for the medium, because it works very well with the medium that he's using, or she. Sorry, I don't know.
Right.
But like it is just,
Wizard.
Yeah, the wizard uses.
Our source of DeviantArt says he.
Also, wizard's a male term, isn't it? Or is that a gender neutral term?
That's gender neutral.
Gender neutral,
I
or it's
see.
become gender neutral, I guess. Wizardess,
like guys.
I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, that was basically the end of my.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a better example, something that was a little more relevant to ponies and that people might recognize.
Well, like,
and I thought of Inuhoshi.
yeah.
And now don't get me wrong, like I'm not saying that Inuhoshi's art isn't great, it's spectacular, but when I look at her art, to me it stands out as this is amazing despite the fact it's made in GIMP. And you can tell that it's made in GIMP, and you could tell that it's not, like it's like it is different, but I feel like it is restricted in a way, and it is almost purposefully difficult. That isn't the case in Inuhoshi. We did an interview with her a couple of years ago, and she mentioned that that's what she prefers and that's what she works best with, which is great. But I feel like with her art, it's more like, wow, this is amazing, and then you get the added bonus of like you're using something which might be seen as quote unquote inferior. Whereas I feel like watercolor doesn't quite fit that description in my mind.
No, that's maybe not, but that's kind of my point. Is like there's barriers of her medium, right? And so watercolor is still one of those things where when you're using like water-based liquid pigments onto like absorbing paper, it's still one of those hugely barriered mediums in that you can only go so dark and with certain colors or certain pigments, and you can't overlap other pigments because they will show through and absorb into the paper. And then when you push them next to each other, sometimes there's challenges there. And like you see certain things in how it's painted, and it looks very much like the medium. Like you can't, basically my point is it's very hard for Inuhoshi to make it look like her art isn't done in GIMP because like there's barriers to that program. You can't make a watercolor not look like a watercolor. Like you can see this and you can instantly tell like it's a watercolor. We can see paper behind it. We can see texture. We can see certain blending areas like in the background in the trees. And so Wizard of Art's amazing. And also why Inuhoshi is amazing, because they use that to their advantage in a lot of ways, where like behind the Cutie Art Crusaders, like there's a lot of kind of like very like blended together colors to make kind of that dark shadow. And then the trees as well behind the branches, you can see there's kind of some bleeding into the paper. And then what is it, Nightmare Moon's hair as well at the edges of it where it kind of fringes. And so there's all these like techniques you can use to push forward how well done and like awesome your medium looks, but it still is like you are trapped in that this still looks like a watercolor. I would say that now it's on our computer screen and it's scanned, it's like, oh, this looks like an awesome picture and blah blah, and there's that argument, but it still looks very much like a watercolor. Do you get what I mean by that?
Yeah,
I do understand where you're coming from, and that does make sense to me. I wanted to go off of something that you said during that sentence. And I wanted to comment on something directly on this art piece as opposed to just talking about the medium in general, because we tend to do that a lot with Wizard of Art. So let's talk about this art piece in particular. I really liked when you pointed out the background, the trees in the background, and kind of how it's the water has seeped in a way, but it almost comes off like you're looking at it through a camera, right? And the light is kind of blurring in the background. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but this happens a lot with cameras where you can see in the background like the light will kind of it'll go out of focus and the light will shine brighter. There's a phenomenon for this, and I can't come up with the actual term.
Are you thinking bokeh or
perhaps
maybe.
I don't know, but anyways, the way that the water, like this is obviously a watercolor thing where the water is seeping in the background with the trees and the light coming through the trees, but it makes it look like it's a camera effect, and I think that's super cool.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, where like when kind of light shines in a lens, it kind of it like fractures depending on what like the lens is or like the receiving device, and so like
Right. Yeah.
sometimes that's like a plus looking thing or a star or whatever, you know, or like a halo.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Going on again, like kind of those trees, and I guess also on the topic of like barriers to mediums, something I've noticed with watercolor is sometimes, let's say sometimes, it's very hard to push forward concepts of like value and depth. And so it can still be done, but sometimes it's difficult because sometimes it's hard to push certain pigments, and so it's hard to push certain like values and shades of color. But I feel like Wizard of Art, again, has done a really awesome job in this, in that if you look at the trees as they're kind of like the negative space that fills around Nightmare Moon, so like between her wings and like around the character, the trees in the background are still like a very subdued gray, which is a different value of gray than like the black that's in Nightmare Moon, and also a different like hue than the tree. And it's
Right.
kind of more green, and so like the hue's a little different, and so like it's again like kind of the pigment used and the amount of pigment used is done very well compared to other things, but it's still sort of a similar. Like if we were to turn this to black and white, I feel like a lot of things would get muddled because like their value is still very similar. So like with watercolor, you kind of have to play more with hue than you do with strength of pigment. That being said, like Nightmare Moon, because she's like black, and like the hole in the tree and like the characters or the colors behind the Cutie Art Crusaders, those are still very kind of dark and deep in value, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of just one of those other factors. But I know Wizard of Art does a really awesome job of it, and there's another artist I'm thinking of, Blixit, we've featured before, really pushes forward like value and like brightness of colors, because like you can still get like really strong pigments with watercolor and stuff. It's just that water to pigment ratio. It's just sometimes the paper that you have and like the absorbent whatever becomes kind of challenging, but like you can still push it more than maybe what I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really like how the Wizard of Art kind of did layering in this, with where Nightmare Moon kind of breaks up the piece, or breaks up the foreground from the background, especially like her wing, where it kind of breaks the tree line. It kind of gives you that sense of depth a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because she's like the only thing in the midground, right? Like everything, the main tree that's covering the four of them and the four of them down there, they all seem to be pretty much in the foreground, and then you've got Nightmare Moon in the midground, and then you're right, it does separate the other trees. Now, of course, I'm sure you could argue that there's actually a lot more depth than just foreground, midground, background, because when you actually look down at the four of them, there's an additional level of depth with like the ferns in front of them.
Yeah.
But I see exactly what you mean, and I agree.
What was I gonna say? I forgot. Oh, that's right. So another unique little style piece that I really wanted to point out in this that I think is really awesome is if as you look around the piece, there's a lot of areas that have really bright kind of like white outlines to them. And that's one of those things in watercolor where it's hard to do unless you use like specific strategies, or you start bringing things like gel pens. You kind of like start mixing, so it's not just like a pure medium. It never has to be a pure medium. It doesn't make it any less awesome. It's just like there's areas that look like they were kind of carefully placed after the painting was done to make like white in the bark. There's a lot of white areas in the bark, and then also up above Nightmare Moon, and also in her hair as it flows, there's these white streaks going through it. So I'm curious if that's a gel pen or maybe like a wax pen, just like the technique used in this, because like when you're talking about traditional art, there always has to be some kind of like special technique or thing you have to do for the process. But I really like those, and the branches up above, and Nightmare Moon, and then the tree as well. Anyway.
Yeah, I like the little sparkles that he gave her mane.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of going on that same note. But I think we have to move on to the next piece,
which is Burns.
All right, so for my piece, we actually shift gears quite a bit. To something
Shift ears?
completely different.
I gotta put on new ears. Jeez, Burns, I just put these on this morning.
So the piece that I wanted to feature is called Nautilus by Sharpie Boss. And I really like this piece, and it has a little bit of context. So I have recently been having some very lengthy conversations with Hunterniff. That was an artist who sent us in some questions a few weeks ago, if you remember them. They were really like kind of like artsy questions about certain topics that were really good. And we featured Hunterniff on the show before. And what is it? He's the artist who did the Flufflepuff piece with like really up close in the camera and like all the colors, and she's like holding the paintbrush in her mouth. If you guys remember.
Sure.
Anyway, so basically, he had some questions about like expressionist art and kind of like the term and the purpose, and we were looking at what we would consider expressionist artists in the pony fandom, and Sharpie Boss was like a really good example of that. So I was going through Sharpie Boss's gallery and I found this piece, and so this piece kind of delves into a more kind of I would say it delves into something that's kind of like a more expressionist context. And it could just be the artist drawing something visual and like fun. But I do know from other friends of mine that when Sharpie Boss like paints something, it's very personal to the artist, and he cares a lot about the things in which he like paints and puts out there. At least for most things, for what I know. But when like seeing this piece, there's a lot of things I guess just kind of like capture me about it. Like, so the character, like the colors used, and just kind of like the visual qualities of it that I feel like are really cool. So it's basically like really, really dark, and you have like this dark stone-like character, and then it has the really, really bright yellow behind it, right? And so I feel like there's some kind of like emotional kind of like tie or expression going on here. And yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this, and also like it's at first I was kind of confused at what was going on, but there's kind of what is it? The pony's hair is actually turning into like a nautilus shell and then like curling around the character, hence the title Nautilus. And it's actually this is based off of a style of another artist named Zdzislaw Beksinski, which is a pretty sweet name. But warning, do not go Googling that name if you don't want to see very like kind of unpleasant and I would say more like adult grotesque imagery. It's nothing that's like awful, but it's definitely like there's images that are like meant to be kind of more shocking and oriented at adults, but still like another really awesome and popular artist. Anyway. But back to this piece. But I'd be curious to know what you guys think, because like I really enjoyed how this piece was painted and like the character and like I don't know the kind of like things going on in it, and I'd be curious to know what you guys thought.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even see the nautilus shell until you pointed it out, so that's cool. I enjoyed these kind of pieces, especially like the piece by Pigfish that we had brought up many episodes ago with the 3 Cutie Art Crusaders, where it's like. A little bit more out there, like kind of makes you think about what the artist was going through when they painted this, and like
exactly, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like it's really thought provoking, kind of shocking in a way, like you said, and yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to go from something that we just saw with that was more like heavily detailed to something and very well defined in reality to something like this that's quite the opposite, right? Like there is detail, but a lot of it is very loose brushstrokes, and a lot of it's left up to the interpretation of the viewer. And I kind of like that juxtaposition of us having these back to back, because this does raise a lot of questions, not only like mentally, like what's this scenario, what does it mean, all that kind of stuff, but also like physically, like what am I actually looking at?
Yeah.
And there's so that was cool.
There's also kind of like physical impossibilities too. So like one area I'm looking at is the area of yellow behind the character's neck. You'll notice that it's kind of like seeping this yellow glowing kind of like sand stuff or whatever. What I don't know what it is, but this kind of yellow glowing thing that's kind of like sifting down. But it's coming from the back of the characters, like off of the arch of their neck, and then like onto the horn. And like physically, that's impossible in the space. But it just creates a kind of a unique physical quality. So it kind of pushes that horn backwards, yet where it's coming forwards, and so it kind of makes a unique impossibility there.
Yeah.
That like visually it's really cool, and so like there's a lot of things about this where it's like it does more to create something visually interesting than it does like visually realistic. If that makes sense.
It's getting all
no, absolutely
getting all MC Escher up in here.
Yeah. And the Nautilus horn or like shell, when I first looked at this, I didn't look at the title, and originally I thought it was kind of like a ram's horn because I've drawn a ram's horn before, and so it's very visually similar to that. And then like, like ponies or goats or whatnot. And so I thought there was kind of like a ram's horn growing from like the character's head and like curling around. Then there's like the title Nautilus, and so like the shell and their horn, I thought there was some visual similarities there as well. And also like the side of the character's face, how it's kind of like lined. I thought that was interesting.
Even their eyelids
but
are lined.
Yeah. Something you said, Ted, where it's like you were curious like what the artist must be thinking or going through when they're painting this, and like that's like the perfect point with the term I used earlier when I was talking about like expressionist notions, and that's the conversation that I was having with Hunter Niff, is that we were kind of talking about expressionist art, and when someone paints something, it's not so much that they're trying to make you feel a feeling, but they're trying to paint a depiction of what they were truly feeling inside. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you externalize something that isn't physical, right? It's emotional. And so like this, like an expressionist piece or a piece like this, when you see it, it's thought-provoking, it's really cool, but like it's more about where the painter or where the artist's head was, or where their feelings were, what they were going through at the time in which they painted something like this. And so it's more of like, it's much more an expression of them than it is something that we're supposed to see and then get a distinct impression of. You know what I mean? And so like it gives us certain like feelings of like what I don't know, things that I think are cool about it or whatever. But I don't know where it's going with that, but I enjoy it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Like I put this in my wallpaper rotation just because like it captured me in a way.
But it's 5,000 by 5,000 burned.
I definitely shrunk it down.
Crazy.
I could make a double-sized wallpaper with this.
I'm constantly coming back in my head to like obviously the brightest parts of the piece, the parts that stand out the most, which is the yellows, right? The yellows and the oranges and the whites that seem to be shining through, and it's just so weird to me. Like my brain just can't comprehend what that is, because on the one hand it looks like holes, right? They look like breaking through the kind of shell, right? Especially the little pieces next to the big one. Definitely reminds me a lot of that. But then it's also seeping in a way, it's dripping, and so it's like that makes me think, is this liquid or maybe like a sand? Like there's so many conflicting messages that I get with that part of the piece, and it makes it very interesting to look at and analyze.
I love it.
You can't tell what the heck it is.
Yeah, it's like liquid light or something.
Yeah, and it's like, is that in front of the character? Is that behind? Like it seems to be behind the character's face, but like, is it in front of that, like the neck area, or is it behind? Is it a hole? Is it something on top? Like,
totally.
There are some of them that are more obvious, like the nose holes. It's like, okay, that's evidence that this is probably a hole. But then again, like the dripping is like, what? Like that doesn't make it seem like a hole at all.
Yeah.
So something that keeps coming back up in my mind was that these like kind of like the sifting sand or whatever that is, like the yellow light that's dripping down. I was curious where it's coming from underneath the character, because it's like coming kind of out of the nostril, but you can definitely see like in to the like the nose hole, like you can see through it, you can see where like the horn kind of goes through it as well, and like the light comes through it as well. So I keep asking myself, like, does this, maybe a little macabre, but does this character have a jaw? Like, do they have like because their face looks like nice. I think it's painted really nice. It's actually quite cute. I like how the character's rendered, but they're tilting forwards, and so you can't see like what's going on under there, but you can see through their nose, and then you have like this stuff sifting out, like almost like drooling from the character,
almost like a mouth.
Yeah, and so like I'm curious, like, is there a jaw to this character? Like, do they have a mouth? Or are they just like a top half of a head? Like, I don't know. It's kind of creepy and plays with those kind of unpleasant notions, and I dig that as well.
Maybe they're like a broken nautilus shell, and like
yeah. Don't know. It's certain. I mean, and that's what we're talking about, right? It's up to interpretation, and I'm sure a lot of people would probably be turned off of the idea because of that, right? Because they can't, even upon analysis, you might not be able to fully come up with your own viewpoint of what exactly this is, and that might not necessarily scare some people, but just put some people off. But I think it makes for a really interesting art piece that, doesn't face the same folly of a lot of other art pieces, which is viewing them repeatedly over time gives you diminishing returns. This one, I feel like, extends its life cycle of viewership by keeping things vague and making you go back and wonder each time you look at it. It's almost like you're experiencing it for the first time because you never really experienced it fully ever.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I've actually recently become a really big fan of Sharpie Boss and his work because it's always trying to push that boundary of like what you were just saying of like your comfortability, and he likes playing with like the uncanny valley as well. A lot. And
it's certainly weird.
So like
weird.
It's definitely pushing like what we feel is like what we're comfortable with, or like what we enjoy, or like things that are like macabre. And like he kind of draws characters very personal, like up in your face, and again to kind of like almost like make you feel uncomfortable in like terms of space between you and the character, and like intimacy. And I don't know, I feel like it's really awesome, and like from like an artistic standpoint, and like another artist looking at another person's work, that like ignoring the fact that it's pony, I feel like Sharpie Boss is like really up there in terms of like artists that are doing like really unique, cool things to like that like actually do like interesting concepts with the viewer.
Yeah.
So compliments to you, Sharpie Boss, if you ever listen to this. Love your work.
So we are going to move on to the next one, but I'm going to transition a bit because I hope you don't mind, Ted.
That's okay.
I'm going to do the transitioning a bit because I wanted to mention this point, and I think it's relevant for this piece and also the next one. And the thing that I noticed about Sharpie Boss, we were mentioning that this might make you feel uncomfortable. You might not be into it that much, and it's not the best or most popular, but it's simply unique and interesting, as you were just mentioning, Bern. Oftentimes, with new artists, what I'll do is, in order to get a sampling of their work, you go to their gallery and you hit like all by popular, right? So like, what have people liked from this artist, right? To like just check out perhaps what other people are seeing when they view this artist, or to just get a general sense of what they do overall as an artist. And what I find particularly interesting about Sharpie Boss was that all of the stuff that we've talked about, all of the experimentation, seems to be very minimal in the most popular pieces of his. A lot of his popular pieces are the ones that I feel like he's experimented the least in. The ones where the characters are very clearly defined and that there's a very clear idea behind it. And those are more popular, which makes sense, right? It's easier to appeal to everyone when your message is very clear in what you're presenting. I just thought that was a very interesting note, that it was so different between what we've been seeing with Sharpie Boss and what everybody else has been seeing and enjoying. I just thought that was really interesting. And that transitions into what Ted was going to bring up in his art piece.
Before I do that, or maybe like in the popular piece, the meaning is even deeper than like the surface and what most people see. Getting existential in there.
I would say it is, especially with some of his work, but it's also like I have opinions on it as well, that it's almost unfortunate that the pieces in which are harder to appreciate because the average viewer may not kind of like understand them, or their concepts kind of leaves more artistically inclined pieces like we just featured to be less popular, because it's harder for like everyone else to look at them and then instantly recognize the character and like appreciate them. Because like the kind of things which I'm looking at and think are really cool come with interpretations that take time to kind of like think about, or knowledge to kind of like look at it, understand, and then feel why they're cool, right? So like the appreciation comes more with context than what it does with instant like visual recognition. You know what I mean?
Yep. So this this piece is called Rainbow Falls by none other than Sharpie Boss, and it features Rainbow Dash, who is soaked, but still smiling. And
and I think this touches a little bit on what Bernd was saying, where it's almost a little bit uncanny valley-ish. Like the facial structure is just a little bit strange and off, and what that reminds me of is, you were mentioning, well, she's still smiling, and I would say yes if you look at the mouth, it is upturned, but man, that smile is creepy. That's not an I'm very happy and like you'll be happy when you see me smile. It's more like I'm happy and I might kill people.
See, I see it as like a more exhausted happy, like I'm finally home, like or I'm finally like in.
It
in
could
the
be,
rain.
but there is something there that makes me go like makes me pause. You know, gives me pause. It gives me a bit of caution to be like, what's this all about?
And to me, it almost seems dubious, like mischievous in a way.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting that we all three of us have different kind of interpretations on how like Rainbow Dash looks. So it's kind of along the same theme of what we've been talking about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of the point of these pieces that don't present things in the clearest way up front, right? Is that they appeal to people in a different way, and it's much easier for everybody else to take things in different ways because the meaning isn't put out there for you to. You're not told what the meaning is. You're not told what to feel about it. It just kind of is there, and then whatever path your brain goes down, which is unique to yourself, that's where you end up with your opinion of the piece.
Mm-hmm. Something that really stands out to me is Rainbow Dash's mane, like her hair, the top hair, is very kind of desaturated, and like it's not her normal colors. And what's really interesting to me is that the background, which is all these different like rainbowy colors of like fairly desaturated colors, like kind of crosses over her mane and gives her mane the color. So like there's a yellow stripe that goes over her instead of under her with the rest of the background.
Right. Yeah. I like it. It definitely there's like a lot of matching there, right? Like the colors in the background kind of give like line up right up with her hair. And I'm not sure if it's quite that it goes. I mean, I'm very interested in the fact that you saw it as it's going over, because in my head it's two separate things that happen to line up. But obviously, the way that you're seeing it is that the colors are going over her.
Yeah.
And giving her hair the color. That's interesting. I wouldn't have seen it that way.
But there's also like we were talking about earlier in kind of like visual impossibilities. There's also things in this like visual messages that don't match up, and then also at the same time create something really unique. So like the title Rainbow Falls, and then like seeing that kind of knowing is a narrative, and then looking at this picture and having like kind of what looks like a rainbow waterfall like behind Rainbow Dash, and it looks like she's sitting in it, right? And then you see these painting and brushings of color that come like down vertically and overlap Rainbow Dash like on her shoulders and like on her legs, these big like square like brushes, which is like cool, like just from a brush standpoint. But then yet she's dripping as if she like just came out of the waterfall, and so you have color overlapping her like she's in a waterfall, yet you have the actual like water and drops drawn as if like she's not all the way in the waterfall. And so again, it kind of creates this duality of messages. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the colors that were used on Rainbow Dash. Like if you look at her ears, for instance, like those are not blue. That's like purples and pinks and stuff.
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not Rainbow Dash's colors, but you know, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's not like terribly off. Like I don't know, but it does give you kind of a pause, and you kind of have to think about it for a second.
Yeah. There's what is it? There's really cool things going on with you remember we talked about kind of like what's going on with like a camera lens in the first piece that you featured with the Wizard of Art. There's something like that going on this as well, where the really brightly colored kind of like colors and rainbow behind Rainbow Dash is actually really, really white. Like when you click on this and look at it in the like just like the full view, the right hand side of the picture actually blends into the whiteness of what you're looking at. It's actually just pure white. And so you have this like really highly exposed bright colors behind Rainbow Dash, and then she's more like dark and now like not in the right exposure, you know, because she's like very dark push forward, like very like dark shade over her brow and like in her legs and areas. And I don't know, it again, it's just visually unique.
I personally find it fascinating when an art piece, which, you know, when viewed as a whole, has, you know, a lot of artistic merit, and you can see that time and effort and good results have come out of it. When viewed as a whole, I find it so interesting that when you look at the pieces individually, they themselves might not be anything spectacular, you know, if you were to take Rainbow Dash out of this piece, you know, you've got an obviously planned out set of colors to represent the waterfall, but let's be honest here, you know, that's not something that by itself would be tremendously spectacular, you know? It almost looks like something that you could make, that anybody could make, right? But when it's combined and when the context is given for the piece, which is something that the artist does, right, in creating Rainbow Dash and the interaction between the background and the character, now it becomes more than just the sum of its parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though a part of it, like the background, I might look at that and be like, anybody could draw that. The fact of the matter is that anybody didn't draw that, and the artist that did decide to draw that, it might not be physically impressive, but in context it is, and in context it's more important than if you were to just take it out of context.
Gotcha. Be careful with that notion, though, because like you don't want to offend any contemporary or modern artists who just paint qualities of color, you know. But then again, they're usually not doing it in digital form because the medium isn't conducive of what they're attempting to do.
And again, context is everything, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that can apply also to modern art. You know, the modern art usually has a lot of context behind it to explain to you know, that it often represents things. So, you know, I think context is even more important in what did you say? Damn it, what's that called?
Modern contemporary art.
Yes, thank you,
Gotcha.
modern art. So yeah, and I think the sense of the sum, the more than just the sum of its parts, is something that comes up quite often in modern art.
Mm-hmm. Something I want to talk about real quick. I mentioned earlier a term I talked about. Well, I was talking about how Sharpie Boss likes to push certain things or like play with different feelings or like making you feel certain ways. And I also feel like there's maybe, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I feel like this piece in particular, like seeing Rainbow Dash, kind of seeing her like wet again, it's in a very intimate fashion, and like I use that word as like a way to describe how we're viewing this character, right? It's very much like us looking at her. So if we're looking at like us as the viewer, if we're placing ourselves in this art piece, like we are seeing like her as a character, and like she could even be diverting her eyes from us, and like she's shy, and like that's why she's smiling.
Sure.
And like that kind of adds more narrative. And then again, like when you make this picture like large, take up your whole screen, like we're very like close to the character. Very, again, it's very like personal, and so like it's pushing, you know, again, terms of comfortability there. And I don't know, I felt like that's very intentional with this piece, like especially if you are the artist and you're painting that and you're in the artist place, like looking at this character, and like you're painting this character as like a scene that is like going on. Again, it has just like that word that I mentioned is very, very like strong notions of intimacy. So.
Yeah,
I could see exactly what you mean. Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I can definitely.
I would
see
be
that.
really, really curious about Sharpie Boss's context, though. Like we mentioned context earlier too. Like Sharpie Boss usually doesn't give a lot of context. Like there's usually not a description. It's just like a link to his Tumblr, and even his Tumblr doesn't have descriptions. And in his tag, it just says like Rainbow Dash Rainbows, waterfall colors, My Little Pony. And it's like, man, like yes, this is colors and this is awesome, but it's just like it's so intimate in so many ways, and like it's how it's painted is so unique. Like there's got to be like context here. Like give me context, man. I don't like add him on Skype and be like, you don't know me, but I want context.
Maybe we should just bring him on the show and be like, okay, what's the context of this one? Okay, next piece.
Should.
Spend 40 hours going through all of his art
Yeah, I
pieces.
know.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Anywho.
All right. Well, that is the art for this week. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that art, but we are going to now move on to the questions. Let's do that.
I can do that.
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the first question is your hopes and wishes for MLP FIM Season 6 by Sun and Blitz.
The season we're in, right?
No, that's the next season.
No.
Next season.
Next season.
We haven't even finished this season.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I
Are
don't
you guys
know.
even caught up on season 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. I was thinking of other people who I was talking to about the season.
The Pie Sisters was this week's, right?
That was
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Maybe. What was last week's episode?
That was the Nightmare Night Fluttershy.
Okay,
yeah.
Watch that. Okay.
The one that was
Yeah,
leaked.
that was good. I didn't see the leak, but it was still good.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I guess like now that, spoiler alert, the Cutie Mark Crusaders have their cutie marks, like that was a pretty big
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
thing on
that was
everybody's
like my hopes and
checklist,
dreams.
right?
It was like happen,
Yeah.
and then
So-
it happened.
I don't know. I think with the upcoming seasons of My Little Pony, the show isn't going to go on forever, right? So I think starting in season 6, we're going to start to see, kind of this sounds dramatic, but kind of the beginning of the end in a way.
Mm.
That's what it feels like to me. I don't know how many seasons they have, whether or not 6 is going to be the
Go
last
forever.
one, or probably go for 7. There's something in my head that seems like 8 is the number that it's going to go. I've had that feeling for a couple years now. So for whatever reason, I think that. But
8,000.
I think, I don't know, I just want to see them continue doing good work, right?
Yeah.
Like there's lots of different episodes that they make that don't do anything particularly special, but are just so well done in all aspects. Like Castlemania, nobody expected that to be a great episode. But Ted, I know you and I, and I don't know about Byrne, but I know at least you and I think that that's one of the best episodes they've ever made. And like it wasn't really anything special, right? It was just well written, well portrayed. It was just good overall. So I'd love to see more episodes like that. I think right now there's nothing really on my checklist that I think episode 100 did a big job of checking off a lot of other things on the checklist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it seems like season 5 is kind of doing that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, with the Cutie Mark Crusaders and with episode 100.
Gilda. Episode 100.
Gilda came back.
There's
been a lot of things. Let's
Yeah.
here. I'm just gonna come up with something. Cake Twins. I'd love to see them grow up a
Yeah.
bit. That'd be cool.
I want to see more of Discord's realm and his house and stuff.
Okay, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
I
Just kind of like an episode that actually takes place in Discord's realm
Yeah.
versus just kind of like being a part of like a story.
Yeah.
It's like the stories actually go into his world.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Man, I wish you'd seen the end of Gravity Falls so I could spoil the crap out of you
Nope.
for it. but
I'm still watching it.
There is something
Don't-
so good that
Don't
happened.
la la la
in
la
this
la
most
la
recent
la.
episode.
I don't want to hear anything,
It's
Byrne. I
so
don't want to hear
relevant.
crap.
I just finished season 1.
I don't want to
Starting
hear
season 2
anything.
soon.
Both
I don't
of
even
you.
want to hear anything about like contextual. No, I don't care. The fact that you just now related Gravity Falls and Discord's house makes me want to punch you in the face because that is something. It doesn't matter.
Well,
I'm gonna still
you
watch
better
it. 'cause it's
hurry up
great.
and watch it all.
One last thing I wanted to bring up with this one because I thought of it. Families. I want to see everybody's family. We know Twilight's
yeah.
family. We know Rarity's family. We know Applejack's family, and we know Pinkie Pie's family. I want to see Fluttershy. I want to see Rainbow Dash's family.
Those moments of talking about their family, like if mom and dad were here,
Yeah.
in an episode.
Oh, man.
Ugh. Oh my. Oh
Yeah, that
my.
was another one
Right
I
in
checked
the
off the list. But
feels.
I want to see the Pegasus families.
Yeah.
We haven't. We've only seen Rainbow Dad in
Yeah.
one flashback.
That is-
But everything else, we haven't seen anything. I want to see them.
That is true.
Well, we
haven't seen
know who Rainbow Dash's mother is, right? It's Firefly. Come on, it's
Well, sure, but I don't care what it is. I just want to see and have interactions with the family. I love family interactions in the show. They don't do it often enough, so I'd love to just kind of round out the group there.
What if,
Firefly
like-
That'd be cool.
Canon. Oh,
What if
I know what I want to. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what if like Pegasus families are kind of like birds in real life, and like they get kicked out of the nest at some point, and then they are
Just
not allowed
migrate.
to.
I don't care. I still
come
want to see
back.
them.
Good
Okay.
luck, Rainbow Dash. We migrated.
Yeah,
Get out of here.
You're on your
I
own
mean,
now.
I don't care how they do it. I just want to see some interaction.
Anywho,
Yeah.
I know what I want to see in season 6. I want to see more canon to the beginning of the universe and like its inception, right? And so we always see glimpses of that with Luna, like when it kind of flashes back with her Nightmare Moon. Remember, she was like fighting Celestia, blowing up the castle and whatnot, and then you got to go to that castle. Like that was awesome. Like I liked like seeing that, and then like in the past, and then they went to the castle in the past and stuff like that. Like I want to see like Twilight and the Main Six like maybe take a role in exploring things like from the past and like develop on that storyline, right? Because like the most in-depth stuff for that storyline that I get comes from like Lion and Spirit, you know, and their like animation of like Student of the Night, stuff like that,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, and do you mean also kind of like the hearthwarming stuff too, that they keep throwing back to?
No, I like the hearthwarming stuff, and that they keep kind of talking about that, like talking about like the past and concepts, like yeah.
So you just want to see more of the lore of the past.
Yeah,
of the
I
world.
definitely want to see more past lore. Like we already know the characters, and like we know the stuff that's going on. There's already been a lot of really strong villains that are gonna like ruin the day, and then they gotta save the current world. Like I want to hear about the past world, you know?
Right.
So
Cool.
it's me.
I think that's, we started out by saying, we got nothing, and we end up with a pretty good list of things. So it's good. Let's do the second question.
All right, second question is, have you ever had young artists who admired you and wanted advice from you? Sent in by Seth Williams.
I have such a cool story for this.
Go for it.
Tell me a story.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I took it was color theory. I took or 2D design. 2D design, I took 2D design. 2D design in Clark College, and we were calling roll day 1 of class, and I think I told the story in the podcast before, and then on like day 1 of class, so it was like the teacher was like burn, and I was like here, and then blah blah. Fast forward to the end of class, everyone's like getting ready to go, like packing up, like leaving, and I'm like packing my stuff up, and this kid walks over to me. He was a kid at the time, and he was like, "Hey, did you say your name was Burned?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Do you have a YouTube channel?" I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And he totally recognized me from like our show. And then we went through like the entire 2D design together, and he was always kind of like asking me advice on stuff. Like now and then we were doing like projects together. Like that was friggin' awesome. His name's Cloverpatch on DeviantArt. Forgot that, bro. I still love you. Other than
If you're
that,
out there, you're still alive.
I don't know if he still watches the show, but I know he did.
You better.
You better. I know.
I'm gonna come
I
find
know
you.
what school you go to.
I know your name.
I had you on Facebook.
Ooh.
Other than that, my niece and nephew often ask me for like art advice. So.
I think
Ted?
just like going to BronyCon and doing our panel, it was kind of eye-opening for me at least, because there were a lot of young people in the audience there. And there were a couple of young people that asked really, really good questions for us at the end of the panel. Which, by the way, our panel is now up on YouTube.
Finally.
Excellent,
Sneaky.
Excellent time for a plug there. BronyCon finally uploaded their video of our panel, so you can go watch it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The BronyCon panel. You guys. I wish she contacted us. There was that 13-year-old girl that you guys didn't get to meet, and she showed me her colored pencil Rainbow Dash. It was like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I didn't take a picture of it.
Yeah. The panel was interesting because there was so many people hanging off of our words. The fools.
I know.
The
What were they
fools.
doing?
What are they
Good
doing?
Lord.
Go find actual mentors.
By the way, people watching this episode, if you watching, talking to you, listener, viewer, if you were that girl who talked to me after our BronyCon panel, and you were there and you didn't have a DeviantArt, and you were talking about best ways to like make a DeviantArt, Tumblr, whatever, to post your art, and like if you've made one now and your stuff exists on the internet and you're watching this, freaking contact us. Email us, send us a note like of your DeviantArt. Like I want to see your artwork. God, that frustrates me so much.
Yeah.
So for my answer to this question, I've never really been an art person. Like I've never really been an artist. But I've had people come up to me and ask me, like relating to this podcast, I've had people come up and ask me specific stuff about podcasting and about art critique, because that's kind of what we do here. And I guess like because I have a lot of experience running online shows and doing podcasting stuff, that people tend to come to, I guess because I'm also like the quote unquote host or whatever, people tend to come to me when they want podcast advice. So I've had a couple of experiences with people. It's never too long. Like I've never like I think of mentorship as like taking someone under your wing and guiding them, right? And so I wouldn't say that I've ever mentored somebody, but I've definitely given some advice to people who have wanted to do podcasts of their own, or maybe aren't too sure about how to critique people. Oftentimes, if you're friends with artists, they'll often ask you for critique, and a lot of people don't know how to do that. So I've helped a couple people with that.
Solid.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So speaking of that girl who needs to contact you, Bernd, why don't you take us through the plugs so she knows exactly where she can contact us?
Well, if you needed to contact us, which you should, you can send us an email at cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com, and then you can post to us on Tumblr, which is cutieartcrusaders@tumblr.com, or send us a note on DeviantArt, which is cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. Then we have a Twitter, which is Cutie Art Crusade at Cutie
Art
Crusade. There we go. I haven't done this in so long.
Mm-hmm.
I know, it's fun.
Oh yeah, and our Picardo channel, which is legit now, which is picardo.tv/Cutie Art Crusaders.
Yep.
And is there one more? Is that it?
There's a Facebook.
Oh, Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook.com/Cutie Art Crusaders.
We have over 700 likes on Facebook.
I know,
Bernd.
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that more subscribers than we have on YouTube?
Maybe.
Probably. We have like 4.
Oh.
I'm one of them.
I don't know.
I'm gonna go look.
Yeah,
we have
so-
996 subscribers on YouTube.
Yay.
Oh my goodness,
Oh,
we're 4
wow.
subscribers away for 1,000. That's a
Wow,
hype
that's
cool.
milestone.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you could be one of those last 4.
We're not doing anything special for it, but
If
you can
you
feel
are our
good.
1,000th like on our YouTube channel, I will lick your icon on my screen.
We don't get that information. There's no
Also, there's
analytics
no
for that.
likes on YouTube, Bernd.
I mean, there are. but-
Subscribe. We get emails from people who subscribe who say, "Hey, subscribe to your channel."
Yeah.
We just
All right.
put it all in a folder.
All right. Well, I'm gonna cut this off because we do need to wrap up. We do need to wrap up. But I wanted to just quickly again recap. So as Flutter mentioned, our panel from BronyCon is actually up now, so you can check that out on the BronyCon YouTube channel. Check that out. It's pretty cool. I haven't actually watched it yet, so I'm not sure if they caught at the beginning when we were freaking out at how many people were there.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They got
Cool.
like 5 minutes of me not being there.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet! So you got to hear
Yeah.
us like
yeah.
so,
So
like,
it's just
crap
like
all over you.
we're gonna technically unofficially start now. Vern's not here. He gets to be here, and you guys just like introduce yourself for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then like I eventually walk in. And it's like, hey, Vern.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, we spent like 15 minutes,
No.
or like a good 10 minutes.
bull
like, being
crap.
like, Here's
It
why
was-
Burn sucks.
It was like less than 5.
Yeah.
Forget you.
If you look at all of their uploads on YouTube, like they're all like 54 minutes, 55 minutes, and then it's ours and it's an hour and 5 minutes because of the additional like 5 minutes in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, obviously it was good content.
Yeah, clearly.
So
Quality.
Yeah.
Well, like we introduced ourselves and stuff.
Yeah.
You guys introduced
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know the context to like introduce what we did on the show. So like when you're like, "Who are you, Burn?" I was like, "My name's Burn. I like art." And I didn't even say like what I did on the show. Whatever.
Yeah.
that's
Go
fine.
check it out.
And also, again, just mentioning, we did that animator John Martin Wong video that you should also go check out because that'll be cool.
Martin's cool. I think
Yeah.
I shouted at the beginning of the show. I'll shout it again.
So yeah, that is everything for this show this week. We're gonna be back with a spoiler cast that literally no one's gonna be here for. Apparently, are you gonna be here, Ted?
Yeah, I'll probably be here for it.
Okay, good. Because like I feel like the last like month and a half or so has been me going around and like dragging people in to do the
Yeah.
spoiler cast with me. It's like, is anybody actually here this week? So it's nice to have people here.
I mean,
So yeah, we're gonna have
last week's-
we have a spoiler
last week's
cast as
spoiler
always.
cast went well with Atmos Work and Silver Rain Clouds. So
I didn't watch it, so
yeah.
Well, no, it went well, you jerk.
Yeah. There you go.
it was Halloween. Give me a break.
I was
Um,
eating candy.
So yeah, that is everything for this week. We've got a spoiler cast and all that other stuff that we mentioned. We'll be back next week for another episode of Cutie Art Crusaders. But without further ado, thank you guys for watching. Whether or not you're on the live stream or YouTube, we love you all the same. My name is Rainbow Plasma,
My name's Burn.
I'm Photograph 317.
and we'll see you guys next week.
I love your face.
Bye.
It's great. Got a nice smile.
Speaking of an hour and 5 minutes,